Bay Area people inspiring others to give back.
I don't count the hours, I just do it because it's a passion and I like the community.
To overcome their obstacles.
I don't want to be the victim anymore, and I really do want to start learning how to overcome this.
And to accept others.
We're just a typical family. There's nothing different about us at all. He just happens to have a label.
While forming lasting friendships along the way.
I always say, look at what you've done. He says, no, you did that, but he saved my life.
KTVU Fox 2 presents Bay Area People Inspiring Others. Hi everyone, I'm Claudine Wong, the host of Bay Area People, and I've had the pleasure of telling so many stories of people who've been inspired to do good and who are inspiring others to do the same. So for the next half hour, I want to share just some of those stories with you. And we begin in Sonoma County in late October as the Kincaid fire burned tens of thousands of acres, destroying hundreds of structures and threatening many more. The Geyserville Fire Department jumped into action. And one of the things that is so special about that department is that it is made up mostly of volunteers. But the firefighters I spoke with say that didn't matter. They are willing to risk their lives to stand between the flames and the place they call home. For the town of Geyserville, the Kincaid fire was devastating.
And as the fire progressed, the winds pushed it into the town of Geyserville, so this became the bullseye for the Kincaid fire.
The firefighters met it as it roared over the ridges, consuming whatever was in its path. And as the Geyserville firefighters fought, the flames took the homes of their friends and their neighbors. And as volunteer firefighter John Lilienthal stood on that fire line, the fire turned his family home to ash.
Honestly, it was such a, I was so numb to everything that I think staying on the job was like the best thing for me to do at the time. And from my experience in the Army as a combat medic, the mission always comes first, regardless of what happens. So, we had to continue doing what we were doing, and there was no way we could stop.
For them, the firefight was personal. The department is made up largely of volunteers, and all have their own reasons for showing up. Veteran John Lilienthal is in the Fire Academy and working towards a full-time position.
I decided to use my GI Bill to go back to school to get my EMT license, and then that just eventually led me down this path to knock on the door here at Geyserville.
Battalion Chief Mark Gradick retired last November after working for more than 3 decades as a firefighter. 2 months later, he joined this department as a volunteer.
Still want to give back to the community, and wasn't quite ready to hang it up.
Chris Munzel signed up 21 years ago, inspired after seeing other volunteers in action. He has spent decades balancing this job with his other career.
I'm a winemaker for Ernest and Julie Gallo here in Sonoma County and look after the wineries here in the North Coast.
All of them have gone through hundreds of hours of training just for the privilege of working for free. And they still train every month. And when the Kincaid fire hit, they all answered the call.
We do about 3,000 miles a month. We were at 7,000 miles. So that's these guys, these volunteers, no pay, away from their family, no electricity on at home. Some guys are without gas, warm showers.
In recent years, the department has added a couple of full-time paid positions. But paid or not, they all have a history of volunteering. Even the chief, Marshal Turbyville, who is part-time here and full-time with CAL FIRE.
Roughly 18 years of volunteer time. I still think that I give most of my time at a discounted rate or volunteer, because I don't count the hours, I just do it because it's a passion and I like the community.
It's in his blood. His dad was a volunteer with Geyserville.
When he died, he was still the fire chief at that time in 2003.
They are all bound by a desire to serve.
Can't teach that, huh?
Can't teach that, no.
And as they train for the next one, because there will be a next one, they do it together.
The people that care about the community are willing to show up on holidays, time away from their family, risk their own lives to save their community. That's the American spirit, the way I see it. That's the sense of community. That's what I want to continue to foster. It's hard, but that's what I think is really what's great about America and about California.
This next story brings us to Campbell. It's about an unlikely friendship between a former drug addict and the police officer who arrested her. Rosemary Smith says that arrest and that officer helped her turn her life around. And her story teaches us all that sometimes help comes even when you don't want it. This story begins 10 years ago. Ian White had been working with Campbell PD for about 5 years back then, and he got a call about a mobile home.
It was just a parking complaint regarding a mobile home parked on the street.
Rosemary Smith answered the door.
My impression of her was that she was a drug user and that was the situation at the time.
Did she appear to be on drugs when you were talking to her?
Correct.
We were using, of course. I was doing everything, drinking, drugs, all of it.
But it isn't Smith Ian White remembers most. It was her 2-year-old daughter, Lily.
I remember Lily. I remember finding her daughter in the mobile home, and I want to say at the time my daughter was just a little bit younger than her.
It ended up being a long call. Smith says he spent a long time talking to her.
I finally gave in. I finally told him, yeah, I was high. I was very mad at him. I told him. I can't even tell you what I said to him. It wasn't nice.
When the night ended, her daughter had been taken by Child Protective Services, and she was in handcuffs. This is her mugshot from that night. It was Mother's Day weekend, 2009.
That weekend, I lost everything. I lost everything.
Smith calls that weekend rock bottom. She had spent decades using and losing. Years before, she gave up custody of her son, Matthew.
How long have you been using at that point?
35 years. When I got to the police station, that's all that I was thinking about. What am I doing? This is ridiculous. This has got to stop.
5 days after her arrest, she got clean, entered a family wellness program, and started turning her life around. This picture was taken in a parenting class that she took during the 6 months it took to get her daughter back. Over the next several years, with the help from a judge and mentors, she excelled, enrolled at San Jose City College, and earned multiple degrees.
I think I just switched addictions. Really, I switched from that to that, and that was a really good one, you know. And
that's a better addiction.
Yeah, much better.
She is working full-time now as a supervisor for a security company.
She's a walking testament, not just to us here at work, but to her child and to her friends.
She reconnected with her adult son, Matthew, and she became the parent she always wanted to be for Lily, who has brief memories of what home used to be.
It was very, very filthy.
Do you remember it?
Yeah, I remember it. I don't remember how it looks. I can just remember that it's very bad.
But she is creating so many more memories now of dance and vacations and family, and she credits Sergeant White and that night.
I wouldn't know where I'd be because the life I have now is amazing, and I don't want to imagine that. And Sergeant White just completed that.
It is why Smith reached out to him last year as she was getting ready to graduate from UC Santa Cruz.
I wanted to call him and show him, look at what, I always say, look at what you've done. He says, no, you did that, you know, but he saved my life, like literally.
The bond that has grown since then is remarkable. He went to her graduation, and she's come to the department to tell her story.
We need those success stories. I think more now than ever, we need to see that something works.
He helped Lily. He definitely helped Lily. And he helped me. Saved my life. He saved her life. My family's back. You know, that one moment that happened brought all of that together.
Well, he's a successful surgeon, but his path to the operating room was not easy. When we return, how this doctor was able to overcome his struggles with Tourette's syndrome.
It's not a mark of weakness. In fact, I would say my closest friends, my wife, all see it as a mark of strength, right? Because it's something I have to overcome every day.
Stay with us. We're just getting started. This is Bay Area People Inspiring Others. Welcome back to this KTVU Fox 2 special. I've had the privilege of watching Dr. Wilson Tsai, a successful cardiothoracic surgeon, in action in the operating room. But this year, we also sat down for a deep discussion about how he got there, because that journey was at times long and difficult. Dr. Tsai has Tourette's syndrome. For years, he dealt with bullying and self-esteem issues, and it led to what he calls his lowest point, when he attempted suicide. But we also talked about what happened after that helped him get to where he is now. For Dr. Wilson Tsai, the operating room has always been a special place.
I'm a thoracic surgeon, board-certified cardiothoracic surgeon. And so, you know, my job primarily is to take out people's cancers. The most type of cancers I operate on are lung cancers and esophageal cancers. And, you know, I've actually developed the robotic thoracic program over at John Muir Hospital.
I have stood for hours watching him operate, saw the calm, the steady hands, watched him save lives. But something else is also happening in that room. It is here Dr. Tsai finds a stillness that is hard for him to find anywhere else. He has Tourette syndrome, a disorder of the nervous system that causes repetitive, involuntary movement or vocalization. According to the CDC, 1 out of every 162 children have Tourette's, with almost half going undiagnosed. For Dr. Tsai, who is the youngest of 3 in his family, it started at about age 6.
It's a type of Tourette's called motor tic syndrome, which is essentially where you have certain more simple tics, head nodding, you know, eye blinking, finger snapping, but also at the same time I did have vocal tics, throat clearing, and, you know, kind of having a hut sound and stuff like that. I think it bothered my parents more, and so initially it was, you know, it was seeing multiple physicians, and multiple physicians were saying that it was just something that was a phase, I was going to grow out of it.
But it never went away, and for him, that led to years of frustration and anger.
You know, I was, you know, bullied excessively.
His story is not easy for him to tell, but he believes it is important for people to hear. The bullying started in middle school and continued through high school.
It was hard. I would say definitely a lot of low self-esteem, you know, because what was happening was, you know, not only was I being bullied at school, then I would go home and then I would have my mom and my mom and dad, you know, constantly trying to alter that behavior through, you know, your traditional Chinese techniques, of course. And so it became a cycle where I think I started feeling a lot of anger, you know, towards people. I think especially my parents. I would say the low point was probably, I think I was probably about 13 or 14 when I tried to, you know, commit suicide.
He says until our interview, he's told very few people about that low point, which was also a turning point.
I tried to poison myself, actually, and you know, after the first couple swallows, and you know, I can still remember looking at that in my hand and tossing it away and saying to myself, you know, I don't want to be the victim anymore, and I really do want to start learning how to overcome this.
And so, while the bullying continued, his resolve strengthened. He began studying martial arts, which he says gave him confidence and a sense of worth. And then in med school, he also got a diagnosis.
I was sitting there in my psychiatry class, and I still remember our professor, we were going through, you know, sort of these neurological conditions. And as they were talking about Tourette syndrome, I was like, oh my God, I think I really have this.
That he called a blessing, but it would not stop the many roadblocks he would face. A surgical mentor who didn't think he could operate.
It actually inspired me and motivated me to prove him wrong. And I think that's why I chose one of the hardest career paths in surgery, cardiothoracic surgery, with a specialty in cancer surgery as well.
And that ongoing battle for self-acceptance.
Admitting that I had a problem. Exactly, and that's what I didn't want. I didn't want to do.
Today, he looks at his disorder through the eyes of a father. And while there are no indications that his 3 children could also have Tourette's,
it's constantly in the back of my mind, primarily because of the fact that, you know, I worry about my own kids, and I don't mean to get emotional or anything like that, but, you know, when you think about your own kids, I don't want them to go through the same struggles that I went through.
And so he empowers them the way he empowered himself, through love, acceptance, and martial arts. He is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu and trains 5 mornings a week.
It's not a mark of weakness. In fact, I would say my closest friends, my wife, all see it as a mark of strength, right? Because it's something I have to overcome every day.
He works through the soreness in his neck and his fingers caused by constant motion, and says he doesn't mind answering questions about Tourette's.
There are patients who've asked me about it.
And in the hours he spends in this operating room, he finds that calm,
For me, that's why I love surgery so much, because what it does, it gives me that moment in time where I'm not in constant motion from the Tourette syndrome, where I can focus on something where I don't feel the tics happening.
It's a stillness that he covets, and finding it here allows him to both save lives and prove that while Tourette's is a part of him, it does not define him. Well, from laid off to homeless in just 2 months. Up next, how a family with young children got off the streets with a little bit of help.
I was able to come in literally by luck itself, chance, faith, blessing, or whatever you want to call it.
You're watching Bay Area People, inspiring others. Welcome back to this KTVU Fox 2 special. Homelessness is an issue for many people here in the Bay Area, but one mother's story proves that there is hope. Layoffs forced Dorothy Dominique and her family out of their Hayward home, but she tells me she was able to stay off the streets with a little bit of help.
I'm a dreamer.
I'm a dreamer.
I can do anything. Say it. I can do anything.
I can do anything.
They are positive affirmations for the children in Dorothy Dominique's after-school program. But for her, they are also words to live by. She's lived the dream, and she's faced the dark.
It was horrible. I mean, it was a nightmare. Let's just be real. It was a nightmare.
She's talking about 2013, back when she was engaged with a newborn baby and a toddler. And then her fiancé lost his job.
Everything was fine. October, transitioned to November. That's when he was called into the office, and they told him they had to downsize and had to let him go.
All of a sudden, the family couldn't make the rent, and by December, they were homeless.
I think I was having this, denial, like, oh my God, I'm homeless. Like, how can I take that in? I've not ever been homeless. This is the first time, and it's the worstest time to be homeless.
Desperate to keep her family off the street, they turned to Fesco, a family shelter in Hayward. Fesco found her family a place at Banyan House in its transitional housing program. She calls Fesco her beacon of light.
I was able to come in literally by luck itself, chance, faith, blessing, or whatever you want to call it. And we were able to come in towards the end of December, prior to Christmas.
Shelter was the first step, but climbing back would take many more.
I literally had a breakdown. At a full-blown breakdown at Fesco.
The emotional weight of what she faced, she says, was almost too much to bear. But that low point was also a turning point.
After that breakdown, I looked at it from a different perspective. I said, it's not about feeling sympathy for myself or saying why me and pitying myself. It's about me saying, okay, you have this opportunity. You could have been out on the streets. And though you were giving a place with a roof, regardless if it's your roof or not, utilize this time. Be as productive as you can, be as efficient as you can, and just make sure that you don't ever come back here.
They found jobs, and with the help of a subsidy program through Fesco, eventually this home. And her determination grew. So, even when her daycare business struggled, even when she and her fiancé parted ways, she says she was determined to never be homeless again.
I did like weird jobs, odd jobs to just take care of the rent.
And then last year, she found Hayward Collegiate, a brand new charter school.
Dorothy is so special. She and I met because we were looking for more founding parents and she wanted to get more involved. She wanted Adana, her daughter, to come to our school.
Founder Meena Goswami says Dominique started as a volunteer. And then they saw an opportunity.
Dorothy had her own daycare, and we asked her if she wanted to sort of expand and lead our after-school program.
And as she settles into this new life, Dominique isn't looking back or slowing down. Life, she says, has changed for the best. And she hopes her story inspires others who are struggling to find the will to change their lives too.
If they can find a little bit of will, a little bit of light, they can find their path.
A little boy doing big things. After the break, we'll introduce you to this adorable 5-year-old who's helping to raise awareness about Down syndrome.
I don't even see an extra chromosome, I see my son. You.
Yeah. This is Bay Area People, inspiring others. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this KTVU Fox 2 special. I had a lot of fun meeting the subject of my next story. James O'Leary is as cute as a 5-year-old can get, and he also has a big job to do. James is a global ambassador for the nonprofit Nothing Down. The group aims to raise awareness and to advocate for the rights, inclusion, and well-being of people with Down syndrome. I visited James and his mother Larkin at their home in Santa Rosa and was absolutely charmed by James, who shows us we all have much more in common than we think.
Ready? Yeah. 5 little monkeys swinging from a tree. Teasing Mr. Alligator, can't catch me.
We met James and his mom Larkin at their home in Santa Rosa.
Here I am, how do you do?
And it took no time at all to see why James was just chosen as an international ambassador for the nonprofit known as Nothing Down, which is dedicated to showing people there is nothing down about Down syndrome.
We're just a typical family. There's nothing different about us at all. He just happens to have a label.
Larkin beams with pride when she talks about James.
Yep. He is a little ham. He loves he's a great friend. He's super empathetic. When I list things about him, the very last thing I list is he happens to have Down syndrome.
But she says the Down syndrome conversation is important because it helps people see the person, not just the disability.
The people don't want to ask because they don't want to offend. And people don't want to overshare because they don't want to, sound like they're oversharing, but it's a conversation that needs to be started.
Teaching people how to have that conversation comes naturally. She and her husband are both teachers, and they've had to teach themselves a lot. James is their first child, and they didn't know he had Down syndrome until the day he was born.
I knew nothing about Down syndrome.
So they learned, all while dealing with a lot of health concerns.
We were in the NICU for 8 days, and then he had open heart surgery at 4 months old, and then he had intestinal surgery a week later. He ended up having a web in his duodenum that caused him to vomit and not be able to gain weight or eat.
But they have never been alone on the journey.
We had so many people reaching out to us that I started blogging, and I blogged the first year of his life every day.
Now, years later, Larkin has also joined forces with another woman whose daughter has Down syndrome. Together, they are known as the Two Moms, and they go to schools to spread awareness.
Do you think the kids have better questions than the adults?
Yes. Yeah, I think adults are just scared. They don't want to offend.
Larkin says she can't be scared either to talk about the rough spots, the frustration, and the anger.
Yeah, and I get jealous, and I hate that about this whole thing, but it's the truth.
But she says it's okay to ask why James still eats pureed food. She wants to tell you about the band on his head that helps him hear, and she proudly explains how sign language helps him communicate.
And it doesn't matter that he doesn't speak the words, they can still communicate with him, and people who want to will learn how to communicate with him, just like any other kid.
Yes, people aren't always kind.
It's when I see people looking at him, and you can tell the difference between looking at him with cute eyes or curiosity and looking at him with like disgust or why are you bringing him out into public.
And she admits she's been worried a lot now that she's pregnant with their second child.
This one has been really scary.
Are you gonna have a sister? Yeah?
Oh, gentle, yeah, gentle with your sister, absolutely. My goodness.
But all of it, she says, is part of the conversation, and understanding benefits us all. It's what they believe at James's preschool, too.
I would say about 30% of our population currently has some sort of special needs at different degrees.
The LEAP preschool promotes inclusion and says modifications can be fairly simple, and the effort is rewarded.
Inclusion definitely benefits everyone. There's plenty of research that states that it really increases academic growth for both students with and without special needs.
The reward in moments like these are hard to deny. When you watch them play and when you hear them laugh and you see the child, not the disability.
I'm just a mom, just like you. I just love my son just like you love your kids, and there's no different. I don't even see an extra chromosome, I see my son. You. Yeah.
Well, that does it for this KTVU Fox 2 special. I hope you had as much fun hearing these stories as I did getting to tell them. And if you want more, you are in luck because our coverage continues online at ktvu.com. That's where you'll find all the stories you saw here in the Bay Area People section. And that is also where you can find a link to our Bay Area People podcast for my extended interviews with Dr. Wilson Tsai, Larkin O'Leary, and many more. Thank you for watching. I'm Claudine Wong. See you next time.